When we become blended with caretaker parts to such a degree that self is masked, it's easy for us to take on a responsibility for another person's happiness and contentment, when really the responsibility is for our own happiness and contentment. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Connor. It is great to have you here. I know we could do a little bit better with our studio today, but I hope that you can at least enjoy the nature around me. I'm outside of Idaho Springs in Colorado. What a beautiful place to be. Feeling very grateful for this. And there is a big river behind me, but I don't think you can hear it or even see it, but trust me, it's there. In this video, we're going to talk about our caretaking parts and how sometimes our caretaking parts can be blended with this powerful energy of self, which as one of its 8 characteristics has something called compassion, and how this characteristic of compassion is so powerful and so beautiful. We can't have enough of it. There's no such thing as having too much compassion. But what can tend to happen when we are very empathic people is that we have a very strong caretaking part, and that part sometimes puts other people's needs and desires in front of our own. This is to the detriment of not only ourselves, but also to the other person, because it disrupts the authentic relationship that we can actually have. So we're going to more deeply unpack and explore these caretaking parts that many of us have. We're going to talk about the powerful qualities of self-energy that we should only be looking to enhance and really celebrate that they're there. We're going to talk about how to unblend caretaking parts from self-energy. And we're going to talk about what kind of role we can offer these caretaking parts that may better suit their qualities without taking away their incredible skills or making them wrong for caring about other people. In my experience, many of us who are drawn to IFS, who are drawn to modalities of healing, who are drawn to maybe working with other people within the modalities of healing, we tend to be on the spectrum more highly empathic. I would say that in general, we could all use a more compassionate world. So there's no question in my mind that increasing self-energy is going to increase compassion. And through that, we increase our level of empathy. But I also think that some people are just more empathically inclined than others. And that's not better and that's not worse, but it is important to look at it as a spectrum and to identify, where am I on that spectrum? So why are we this way? Why do we tend towards a higher level of empathy or maybe even sensitivity than what we observe in other people? Maybe we're born that way. Maybe it's influenced by our experiences. Maybe it's a combination of both. I don't think that it's very important to understand why you became the way that you are, so much as it is important to be with who am I right now. So it's not to say that there's nothing we can gain by looking at the past and understanding this thing impacted me in this way and it led me to interact with the world in X, Y, and Z. That's great, but that also most of the time tends to be an analytical journey, which tends to be a part of you that likes to figure things out. And so fantastic, you have that part, I have that part too. I'm not saying don't do that, but at the end of the day, you don't have to make sense of where it came from. What I'd like you to do is be with the reality of you in this present moment and to identify for yourself. Do you perceive yourself as highly empathic? Do you perceive yourself as maybe extra sensitive? This is by comparison to other people that you observe in your life. And if you do, then it's probable that you also have caretaking parts. So how do caretaking parts show up in our day-to-day life? There's lots of ways that they can show up. I think in my own system, some of the ways that they show up that I think are pretty common for a lot of us are that I'm highly attuned to the emotional experience of other people around me. I'm very aware, even if there's 10 people around me, I have some kind of way of observing and perceiving what each of those people might be feeling. I also tend to be very impacted by how other people are feeling, especially if a part of me perceives that someone is having a hard time or a challenge and that it has to do with me. With people that are very close to me, people that I love and I care about, I've also tended to be able to perceive what they may need and to attempt to provide that for them better than I can perceive my own needs and better than I can provide things for myself. Does that sound familiar to you? Now, I would say that all of these qualities are incredible skills. To be able to intuit what a group of people is feeling, or even the individual in front of you, not everyone has that ability, and that is such an incredible skill. To be able to humble ourselves to the impact that we may have on another person, what an incredible skill. And to be able to perceive what someone may need and have the desire to provide that for them, what an incredible skill. So first, we really want to honor and celebrate the fact that we have these abilities. Indeed, that we have these caretaker parts. But we also want to be open to how living from these caretaker parts can take away from living from self. When we become blended with caretaker parts to such a degree that self is masked, it's easy for us to have our boundaries crossed, for us to take on someone else's emotional experience much more than we actually should, for us to feel guilty when someone else is having a hard time, even if it didn't have to do with us, and for us to take on a responsibility for another person's happiness and contentment, when really the responsibility is for our own happiness and contentment. Let's talk about self-energy in this equation. As I said earlier, there's 8 characteristics that define self-energy. I like to focus on 3: calm, curious, and compassionate. I think they're the most relevant, easy to remember, and tend to be the things that we can kind of feel most easily accessible if we look for them. Calm, curious, and compassion. As I said, compassion, I don't think that we can have too much compassion, especially if it is coming from a place of self-energy, because this intuitive, empathic, interconnected state of being that we call self does not forget about its own needs, its own desires, when paying attention to other people's needs and other people's desires. It does not forget about its own emotional experience when paying attention to someone else's emotional experience. Caretaker parts, on the other hand, they can forget that. And so while we are not interested in having caretaker parts disappear or go away, we do want to attempt to bring more self-energy in when caretaker parts are present. It is only from a place of self-energy that we can make a holistic decision about how to care for another person. Because again, self does not forget about self. In caring for someone else, ideally, we want to feel like this is a gift that is given freely, that it is given from a place of love and wholeness, that it is not given from parts of us that may be looking for some form of redemption, or indeed may be looking for some form of acceptance, out of a fear of not being good enough or the fear of disconnection. When we can bring more self-energy in, we can also connect with these caretaker parts, and we can better understand their motives. Some of them are going to be pure and beautiful, and some of them may be connected with these things that I just mentioned: a fear of not being enough, a fear of disconnection, a sense of responsibility for others that may go beyond what is realistic. These things are really important and really beautiful to be with. And again, like any other part, we are not telling that part that those things are wrong about them or that they need to change them. What we are doing is accessing compassion. We're accessing empathy. And instead of having it come through this caretaker part and go out into the world, we're having it come from self and be projected onto these parts that are our internal parts. And in this way, we are practicing self-compassion. We are practicing self-empathy. We are putting our needs and our desires in a prominent place of importance. For so many of us that have these caretaker parts, this is the exact thing that we need. Consider how much energy these caretaker parts use when you are around other people or when you are thinking about other people. I've been in groups of people of 10 or more where some part of me or parts of me are paying attention to the experience of each of those people. Some part of me is perceiving how they are feeling, maybe what they're needing, maybe what they desire, something that they might be holding back, if they're feeling shy, if they're feeling uncomfortable. Some part of me is tracking all of that while I'm also here just trying to be me in a group of people. Imagine how much work that is for the parts of you that do that on a regular basis. And what if they had the opportunity to relax? It may be for them that the only way that they can really relax entirely is to deeply know that whatever this fear is that they have, that it is not true, that it is not going to happen, that they are worthy, that they are loved, that they are safe, that connection is available. Now that process might take some time, and it can look like a lot of different things, but something that we can give to them right away is self-energy. So when these caretaker parts come up, the first step would be to identify in your own system, I think my caretaker parts are here. Is that true? By bringing that type of curiosity in, we allow this little bit of separation, which is called unblending in IFS. Caretaker parts from self. Because who is asking that question? Who is the curious one? Self energy is. Once we have that little bit of separation, acknowledging this caretaker part or parts, say, hey, I see you there. I appreciate what you're doing for me. And then to also let it know that you are going to be here too. And if it wants to, it can relax, that it doesn't have to do what it's doing right now. It's okay for it to be here. But can there be more self in the driver's seat? So through this very simple practice of identifying there are caretaker parts here, by acknowledging them and by bringing more self-energy forward, we begin that healing process for them, that they're cared for, that they're seen, that connection is available, that they're safe. I really hope you find value in this video. Of course, if you do, you can share it with anyone that you think it might be helpful for. You can like the video, you can comment, you can subscribe. All of these things help this video and this channel be seen by more people. If you are interested in diving into some more self-therapy using the IFS model, you can check out the link in the description box down below for my complete self-led IFS program. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I really look forward to seeing you on the next one.